The moment he saw her stumble through the restaurant door, designer dress caked with mud, mascara streaming down her cheeks, and somehow still smiling, James Bennet almost turned around and left. What he didn't know was that this disaster of a blind date would change both their lives forever. If you've ever believed that perfect timing sometimes looks like perfect chaos, this story is for you. Before we dive into how Emma and James found love in the most unexpected circumstances, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to hear more incredible stories about love finding a way against all odds. Your support helps us bring more heartwarming content like this to viewers just like you. James Bennet checked his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. 6:15. His blind date was 15 minutes late. The maitre d' of Bellini's, the most exclusive restaurant in the city, had already given him 2 sympathetic glances, and James was beginning to feel like a charity case. At 38, he was the successful CEO of Bennet Innovations, with more money than he knew what to do with, and a 5-year-old daughter who meant everything to him. What he didn't have was time to waste. Since losing his wife to cancer 3 years ago, James had thrown himself into 2 things: his work and raising Lily. Dating had been an afterthought, something his well-meaning sister Diane insisted he try for Lily's sake. This blind date was the result of her persistence, a friend of a friend who was supposedly perfect for him, professional, put together, mature. He'd agreed reluctantly, arranging for his most trusted nanny to stay late with Lily. "Just give her until 6:30, he muttered to himself, taking another sip of water. If she didn't show by then, he could still make it home in time for Lily's bedtime story. At precisely 6:28, the restaurant door flew open. The sudden motion caught everyone's attention, but what held it was the woman who stood in the entrance. Her navy blue dress was splattered with mud from hem to waist. Her honey blonde hair, which might have been elegantly styled hours ago, hung in damp tendrils around her face, and her eyes, wide, mortified, but somehow still holding a spark of humor, scanned the restaurant until they landed on him. James felt himself rising from his seat automatically, a gesture of politeness his mother had drilled into him, but his mind was already calculating how quickly he could make his excuses and leave. "James?" she asked, approaching his table with as much dignity as someone covered in mud could muster. "I'm Emma Lawson, and I swear I don't normally look like I've been mud wrestling." That's when he noticed her knee was bleeding through a tear in her dress, and despite himself, concern overtook judgment. "Are you hurt?" Emma winced as she carefully took the seat the waiter pulled out for her. "Just my pride, mostly. The knee's just a scrape. I'm so sorry I'm late and—" Like this. She gestured to her mud-covered self. There was a little boy. He was chasing his puppy in the park across the street, and the puppy ran straight toward traffic. James felt something in his chest shift. "What happened?" "I ran after them," Emma said simply. "Caught the puppy just before it reached the street, but there was this massive puddle from the rain earlier. I went down hard." She attempted to brush some dried mud from her sleeve, only succeeding in smearing it further. "The good news is both puppy and child are fine. The bad news is that I've probably ruined our first impression beyond repair." The waiter hovered uncomfortably nearby, clearly unsure if he should offer a menu to the mud-covered woman. Emma noticed and gave him a bright smile. "I'd love a glass of your house red, please. I think I've earned it." Despite himself, James found the corner of his mouth turning up. "Make that 2, he told the waiter. Emma looked down at herself and then back at James with a rueful smile. "You know, I almost didn't come in. I was going to call and cancel, make up some excuse. But then I thought, no, I promised I'd be here, and I keep my promises. Even if it means embarrassing myself completely." She paused. "Though I wouldn't blame you if you wanted to cut this short." James studied her, under the mud and disheveled. Appearance was a woman probably in her early 30s, with intelligent eyes and a mouth that seemed more accustomed to smiling than not. There was something refreshing about her lack of pretense, so different from the polished, calculated women he typically encountered. "My daughter Lily did something similar last month," he heard himself saying. "Jumped into a pond at the park to save a baby duck she thought was drowning." His smile grew at the memory. Turned out the duck was just diving for food, but Lily was soaked through. She was so proud of herself, though. Emma's face lit up. "How old is your daughter?" 5. Going on 15 if you ask her. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. She's the center of my world. I'd love to hear more about her, Emma said, and something in her tone told James she genuinely meant it. By the time their entrees arrived, James had forgotten about Emma's appearance. They'd discovered a mutual love of old science fiction novels, a shared habit of stress baking at midnight, and Emma had listened with real interest as he talked about Lily. In turn, he learned that Emma was a pediatric physical therapist who had recently moved to the city to be closer to her aging parents. "So you spend your days helping children overcome physical challenges?" James asked, impressed. Emma nodded, using her bread to soak up the last of her sauce. "It's the most rewarding job in the world. Kids have this incredible resilience. They don't see obstacles the way adults do. They just keep trying until they find a way." "That's Lily," James said with a nod. "Nothing stops her once she sets her mind to something. She sounds wonderful." "She is." James hesitated, then added, "Her mother died 3 years ago. Cancer. It's been just the two of us since then." Emma's expression softened. "I'm so sorry, James. That must have been incredibly difficult. It was the hardest thing I've ever faced," he admitted. "Some days it still is. But Lily gives me a reason to keep going, to make sure there's still joy in our lives. Children have a way of pulling us through the impossible," Emma said quietly. "In my work, I see parents face heartbreaking diagnoses with their children, and somehow they find the strength to keep going, to keep fighting. It's humbling." As they talked, James realized that what had started as an obligation, a date he'd agreed to just to placate his sister, had somehow become the most enjoyable evening he'd had in years. By the time they finished dessert, Emma had bits of dried mud flaking off her dress onto the floor, and James found himself thinking it was somehow endearing. "I should probably let you get home to Lily," Emma said as they lingered over coffee. "I've kept you out late enough. My nanny is staying over tonight," James heard himself say. "Lily's already asleep." He was surprised by his reluctance to end the evening. Emma smiled. "Still, I should probably go home and hose myself down before this mud becomes permanently attached to my skin." She looked down ruefully at her dress. "I really did have a beautiful outfit planned for tonight. First impressions and all that." "I think your first impression was perfect," James said, surprising himself with his sincerity. "Not many people would ruin a designer dress to save a stranger's puppy." Emma laughed. "How did you know it was designer? I have a sister who would disown me if I couldn't recognize a Valentino when I see one, even one covered in mud." "Well, at least the sacrifice was appreciated by someone," Emma said with a grin. As they walked out of the restaurant, James felt a strange mixture of emotions. The evening had started with him ready to write off this blind date as a waste of time, and now he found himself reluctant to say goodbye. "Can I call you a car?" he offered, noticing several people on the sidewalk doing double takes at Emma's appearance. "Thank you, but I've already troubled you enough," Emma said. "My apartment is just a few blocks from here." "Then I'll walk you," James said firmly. "It's late." They strolled through the night streets, the conversation flowing as easily as it had at dinner. When they reached Emma's building, a modest pre-war with a small but well-kept lobby, they both hesitated. "I had a wonderful time, James," Emma said, despite the unconventional start. "So did I," he replied, and meant it. Would you like to do this again sometime? Preferably with less mud involved, though I'm not making any demands." Emma's laugh was warm and genuine. "I would love that." As James walked back to his car, he found himself smiling. For the first time since losing Claire, he felt a spark of possibility, a sense that perhaps there was room in his life for something new. The next morning, James woke to find a text message from Emma. It was a photo of her mud-caked dress hanging sadly in her shower, with the caption, "Worth it. Thank you for not running away." He showed the message to Lily over breakfast, explaining how his new friend had gotten all muddy saving a puppy. Lily's eyes widened with admiration. "She's a hero, Daddy, like in my books." "Yes," James agreed, "I think she might be." Their second date was at the park, James's suggestion, with a laughing warning to Emma to bring clothes she didn't mind ruining. He brought Lily along, wanting to see how the two would interact. Within minutes, Emma had Lily giggling as they fed ducks together, Emma demonstrating the proper way to toss bread so the smaller ducks got their fair share. "Is Emma going to be your girlfriend, Daddy?" Lily asked that night as he tucked her into bed. James smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Would that be okay with you if she was?" Lily considered this with the serious contemplation only a 5-year-old could muster. "I think Mommy would like her. She's nice and she saves animals and she knows how to make the perfect duck sound." Through a tight throat, James said, "I think Mommy would like her too, sweetheart." As weeks turned into months, Emma became a regular presence in their lives. She brought a warmth and lightness that James hadn't realized was missing. She never tried to replace Claire's memory, instead helping Lily create a special memory box where she could keep things that reminded her of her mother. But not everything was smooth sailing. James struggled with guilt. Guilt for moving on. Guilt for bringing someone new into Lily's life. Guilt for the moments of happiness that caught him by surprise. And Emma had her own insecurities, wondering if she could ever truly fit into the life James and Lily had built together. Their first major argument came 6 months into their relationship, when James instinctively excluded Emma from a school event of Lily's, not even thinking to invite her. "I'm not asking to replace Claire," Emma said, tears in her eyes. "But if I'm going to be in your life, in both your lives, I need to feel like I belong somewhere in it." James had stepped back, the defense he'd been building crumbling as he saw the hurt in Emma's eyes. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I've been holding parts of our life separate because it felt safer that way. But that's not fair to you." The reconciliation had been as meaningful as the argument was painful. James realized that moving forward didn't mean forgetting Claire. It meant creating space in his heart for a new kind of love. A year after that muddy first date, James took Emma back to Bellini's. This time, she arrived in a spotless emerald dress, hair perfectly styled, not a speck of mud in sight. She looked beautiful, but James found himself almost missing the disheveled, determined woman who had captured his attention that first night. "No puppies to rescue today?" he teased as they sat at the same table where they'd first met. "Not yet, but the night is young," Emma replied with a wink, though I must say, arriving with dignity intact does have its advantages. James reached across the table to take her hand. "I've been thinking a lot about that night," he said. "How close I came to walking out before you arrived. How differently things might have turned out." "You mean if I'd had the good sense to go home and change first?" Emma laughed. "No," James said seriously. "I mean if you hadn't been exactly who you are, someone who would ruin a perfect dress to save a stranger's puppy and still show up for a blind date covered in mud rather than break a commitment." Emma's expression softened. "Well, I'm glad I made such a memorable first impression." "You did more than that," James said. "You reminded me that life is messy and unpredictable, and sometimes the best things come from the most unexpected moments." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Emma's eyes widened. "Emma Lawson, you walked into my life covered in mud and brought more light and joy than I thought possible. Lily and I both love you more than words can say." He opened the box to reveal a vintage emerald ring. "Would you do us the honor of becoming part of our family officially?" Tears spilled down Emma's cheeks as she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. 1,000 times, yes. They were married 6 months later, in a small ceremony in the very park where Emma had rescued the puppy. Lily served as flower girl, taking her duties so seriously that she nearly missed her cue because she was making sure each petal was placed just right. During the reception, James pulled Emma aside, leading her to a quiet spot beneath a blooming cherry tree. "I have something for you," he said, handing her a small package. Emma unwrapped it to find a delicate silver charm bracelet. There was only one charm attached, a tiny silver puppy. "For the moment that changed everything," James explained. "I figure we can add more charms as we create new memories together." Emma blinked back tears as she let him fasten it around her wrist. "It's perfect." Their journey wasn't without challenges. Blending their lives meant adjustments for everyone. Emma's work sometimes required long hours, and James still struggled occasionally with opening up completely. Lily went through phases of testing boundaries, trying to understand this new family dynamic. But through it all, they built something beautiful together. Emma brought a playfulness to James's once rigid routine. James offered Emma the stability and partnership she'd always longed for, and Lily thrived with the love of two parents who adored her and each other. 2 years after their wedding, they welcomed a baby boy they named Thomas, after Emma's father. Watching Lily embrace her role as big sister with enthusiasm and occasional bossiness brought them both joy beyond measure. On the 5th anniversary of their first date, James and Emma returned once more to Bellini's. As they were led to their usual table, the maitre d', the same one who had witnessed their unusual first meeting, smiled knowingly. "No mud this time, Mrs. Bennet?" he asked with a twinkle in his eye. "Not today," Emma laughed, "but there's always tomorrow." Over dinner they reminisced about the twists and turns that had brought them to this point, the near misses, the moments of doubt, and the leap of faith it took to build a life together. "You know," James said, swirling his wine thoughtfully, "I've built a business empire, launched products used by millions, but nothing in my life has ever been as rewarding as the family we've created together." Emma reached across the table to squeeze his hand. "It's amazing to think how differently things might have turned out if that little boy's puppy hadn't escaped that day. Or if you had decided to go home and change instead of keeping your promise," James added. "Or if you had decided the mud-covered disaster in front of you wasn't worth the trouble," Emma countered with a smile. James shook his head. "I'm thankful every day that I stayed. Best decision I ever made." As they walked home hand in hand under a sky full of stars, Emma leaned her head against James's shoulder. "Do you believe in fate? That some things are just meant to be?" James considered this as they strolled. "I believe that life gives us moments, crossroads where we have to make choices. I could have walked out of that restaurant. You could have gone home to change. We both had the choice to see the mess or see the possibility. And we chose possibility," Emma said softly. "We chose possibility," James agreed. "And I would choose it again every time. Sometimes love arrives in perfectly imperfect packages. Sometimes the messiest beginnings lead to the most beautiful stories. And sometimes the moment that seems like it's going completely wrong turns out to be exactly right." If there's one thing Emma and James learned through their journey, it's that true connection isn't about perfect timing or perfect appearances. It's about seeing someone for who they truly are in their most authentic moments, whether that's covered in mud from saving a puppy or taking a chance on a blind date that seems doomed to fail. So the next time life presents you with an unexpected moment that seems like a disaster, remember Emma and James. Remember that sometimes the best things in life come from embracing the mess, staying open to possibility, and having the courage to see beyond first impressions. After all, you never know when your own muddy miracle might be waiting just around the corner. If you enjoyed this story about finding love in unexpected places, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales that remind us of the power of human connection. Until next time, stay open to the beautiful possibilities that surround us, even when they don't arrive in the package we expected.